Welcome to the campaign strategy section of my Bretonnian race guide. This part will focus on the campaign gameplay and strategy for the Bretonnians, including starting out, later expansion, and the different sub-factions. Disclaimer, this guide was based on my personal experiences and opinions and is by no means the definitive way to play Bretonnia in Mortal Empires. If you have a different strategy or want to add something to mine, please leave a comment down below. Now that's out of the way, let's get into the video. When playing as Bretonnia, you have the choice of 3 factions. While they are all very similar and share end goals, there are some differences that you should know about before deciding who to pick. For the purpose of the guide, I played as Bretonnia, as they are obviously the original Bretonnian faction added in Warhammer 1. They start at Cologne and are initially at war with Marienburg, who are on the east border. The first time you fight is evenly matched as far as the balance of power goes, but if you fight it manually, you should be able to win pretty easily as long as you use your units well. While expanding into their territory, I had an event that caused me to suffer huge public order penalties until I fought a battle against some greenskins. Unfortunately, the only nearby orcs had a full stack or two and were right by a settlement, so I had to spend some time recruiting more units to fight them rather than continuing my expansion into Marienburg. I eventually got an army large enough and took them out on Razor's settlement to gain a little early game chivalry. After this, I continued with a couple of attacks into Marienburg territory before Norska decided it was time to come down from the north and ruin my fun. Now this would normally be no problem, as I could just recruit a new army in my capital province and protect it just like that. Unfortunately, Bretonnia has a mechanic that makes them far from normal, and I would argue a little further away from good. The Peasant Economy mechanic basically means that you have a certain number of non-elite units that you can recruit to your armies before you start to draft in random peasants off the street. Once you go above this number, you start to make a lot less money from farms and industry. This would be just fine if not for the fact that the only real way to make a lot of money early on is by using farms or industry. All this forces you to choose to either have a load of units and heavy deficits, or tiny armies and lots of money. Of course, in the early game you need as much money as you can, so you have to make do with what you have. Anyway, because of this I had to make peace with Marienburg and move Luen back to fight off the Norska coming from the north, which was easy enough, but it had one teeny problem. All of Norska's settlements are in the frozen north, where it is very difficult for me to survive to battle, let alone occupy. That meant that I had to basically fight them off and then extort as much money as I could from a peace treaty. So now I had fought off both attackers and was left with no enemies and not much to do for many turns until I started to become friends with the other Bretonnian realms. I sent out treaties and trade agreements to them all as soon as I could, and soon we had our little alliance, and I decided to give them help with their enemies so I had something to do. Mouzlon was a good first target, as it was nearby and my AI allies seemed to be struggling a little. It was around this time that I noticed something on the research tree as I was searching for good projects. The option to confederate for Bretonnians doesn't come from making them all like you, it comes from a research task which, when completed, gives you the option to confederate for either gold or chivalry. Since chivalry is part of the win conditions, I opted to go for gold, which I'd been hoarding since I basically had no wars. For only 5,000 gold, I could confederate each of the factions, and it only went up in price to the final 2, and by that point I was rolling in it. It's interesting to note that in the process of confederating all these factions, I managed to get a hold of Gotrek and Felix early, so if you want to see what happened with that, there'll be a link in the card now. So at this point the campaign is going rather smoothly, if a little slow for my taste. I took out Mouzlon and had confederated basically all the sub-factions, so could now go after anyone I wanted. One of my remaining allies had a war with the Wood Elf faction, so I decided to clean that up for them, which took far too long due to the Wood Elves just sitting in their settlement, which takes quite a few turns to get to through attrition-filled magical forest. Eventually I got them and turned my attention further south to the pirates and rats down there. The pirates of Sartosa were the easier target, but to get to them I had to get past Ikit Claw, which is much easier said than done. Every single time I tried advancing towards him on land, he'd ambush my armies with 3 stacks, which basically gave me 0 chance of getting out with anything alive. I tried over and over to get across to him, but every time I was met with overwhelming ambushes that I could do nothing to avoid. Eventually I took the sea route to get him, and he didn't seem to understand how to deal with that, so abandoned his settlement and retreated to his capital, allowing me to take it easily. After this you'd think I could move in and finish him off, but oh no, the Skaven are never that simple. Somehow we got a plague off inside the settlement I had literally just taken and gave 3 of my armies unruly amounts of attrition, meaning I had to sit around waiting for it to wear off so I could replenish and take him out for good. This took what felt like forever, but eventually I was able to surround his capital with 4 armies and wipe him out for good. I now had a clear way to get in to attack the pirates of Tartosa, who are much weaker despite having more settlements because the AI doesn't play by the same rules as us mortals. Anyway, I sent my armies further south to take the land, and at this point the Barrow Legion decided it would be a good idea to declare war on me, even though, as usual, they hadn't expanded out of their little hidey hole all game. So I took one of my armies and force marched it the entire way up the map to take him out, and he didn't even attempt to attack my undefended settlements the entire way there. Well played, Heinrich, well played. Once I'd done this and taken out Sartosa, I achieved the short victory conditions and I didn't really want to play anymore, so I ended it there. Overall, the campaign wasn't too difficult aside from the occasional rage-inducing rat ambushes, but this was certainly the case where being laid back was more boring than fun and making me feel like a god. I didn't play the other two factions, but from what I can tell, they would basically play out the same, but with different starts and initial wars. Bordelot start at Bordelot and have their initial war with Mousillon. Carcassonne start at Carcassonne and are initially at war with the Dreadfleet. Neither of these options are particularly good for expansion in the early game, so it's probably worth finding someone to declare war on to get yourself some land before it's too late, or at least get some money so you can start confederating. The expansion options are basically the same for every faction. You can head south like I did to take out the rats and pirates, east if you want to go for the Wood Elves, but I can't say the regions you'll get are particularly worth it. Alternatively, if you wanted, you could have a mega war of the Empire and try and take their huge amounts of land in the northeast, but I don't know how much luck you'd have with that, as the Empire roster is vastly better than yours, as you'll find out in the next part. It's also worth noting that the climate preferences for all three are the same. Temperate, savanna and desert are habitable, mountain, magical forest, jungle and temperate island are unpleasant, and wasteland, frozen, ocean and chaotic wasteland are uninhabitable. Aside from the farm mechanic I talked about earlier, Bretonnia also have a number of unique features that are worth understanding before you give them a try. Vows are basically mini quests that all of your lords have to complete to be able to command certain units. They can still have these units in their armies, but they will be hideously expensive to maintain, so it's essential you get them completed as soon as possible. Chivalry is basically a currency that you build up over the course of your campaign. You get it for winning battles, taking or raising settlements, and some lords and heroes can even get you some per turn. It can be used to spend on buildings such as the brothel, or allow you to sack a settlement, but I found it was best used to let it build up so that you get bonuses for each tier. It's also worth knowing that to finish the campaign, you need to save up near 2,000 of the stuff, so it's definitely worth saving up if you can. If you ever go down to the lowest tier of Chivalry, it can also cause some pretty serious debuffs to the faction, so you want to avoid that if at all possible. The final thing that Chivalry can get you is the Green Knight. He's a unique hero that can be summoned each time you advance a tier and can be extremely useful in battle, as we'll see in the Lords and Heroes section. Aside from confederations, the research tree can also be used to get bonuses in nearly every aspect of your campaign. You can get bonuses for fighting against certain factions, improve your relations with good factions, improve your economy, and of course get some improvements for your units in battle, but mostly this will be focused on your cav. Finally, we get to the commandments. Levy Tithes grants plus 5% tax rate, the Peasant's Duty grants plus 15 growth, Extensive Patrols grants minus 10% recruitment cost and plus 1 to the local recruitment capacity, Realm of Chivalry grants minus 10% construction cost for all buildings and plus 10 to the research rate, and finally, Venerate the Lady grants plus 10 control and plus 2 untainted in the local province. That concludes this section of the guide on campaign strategy. The next section will cover the unit roster and how I believe each unit is best used, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to vote in the poll for the next race you want me to make a guide for, which is linked in the description and the comments. If you want to check out the other parts to this or any other guide, there's a link in the card and in the description for a playlist to the series. If you enjoyed this video at any point, please consider leaving it a like, as it really does help out a lot, and if you want to see more of this type of video, maybe click that subscribe button so you stay up to date. After all, it is free. For now though, I was COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I'll see you next turn.